the species that ruled through fear. For 3,000 standard cycles, the galaxy had whispered one name in the same tone used for extinction events and dying stars. The Varketh Dominion. They were not the largest empire in recorded history. They were not the oldest, but they were the most efficient at ending things. Civilizations, alliances, hope. The Varketh had evolved on a crushing, high-gravity world where bone was dense as alloy and muscle layered like starship armor. Their hides were naturally resistant to radiation. Their blood carried metallic compounds that made them resilient to toxins. But their most dangerous trait was neither physical nor visible. They were linked. Every Varketh existed within a low-frequency telepathic lattice, an ever-present battlefield awareness that allowed fleets to move like single organisms. No delays, no confusion, no hesitation. Where other species relied on commands, signals, and fragile hierarchies, the Varketh operated as one distributed will. Against them, strategy failed. The Threxian Republic had once believed numbers would protect them. 12,000 warships had formed a defensive shell around their homeworld. The Varketh pierced it in 4 hours. Then they sterilized the surface from orbit. Oceans boiled. Continents fractured. The message was broadcast in perfect clarity across all major trade channels. Defiance is extinction. After that, tribute flowed. Resource shipments. Industrial contracts. Entire populations relocated to serve Dominion labor demands. The Galactic Concord signed neutrality accords that were, in truth, surrender documents written in softer language. And for centuries, it worked. Until humanity. Humans were late to the stars. By the time they achieved faster-than-light capability, the Dominion shadow already covered a third of known space. First contact between humanity and the wider galactic community had been cautious, tense, but not hostile. Humans were cataloged as adaptable omnivores from a moderate gravity world, emotionally volatile, politically fragmented, technologically creative but not exceptional. Threat assessment. Minimal. They traded. They negotiated. They argued among themselves on public channels. They built colonies aggressively, but legally, purchasing rights from minor powers and settling frontier systems others had deemed economically inefficient. To the Dominion, they were irrelevant. Until Colony Kestrel. Kestrel was a young human settlement orbiting a yellow dwarf near the Dominion's expansion boundary. 2 million permanent residents. 10 million rotational workers. Agricultural domes. Orbital shipyards under construction. Mineral extraction platforms threading the nearby asteroid belt. It was productive, which made it useful. The Varketh demand was transmitted without ceremony. All industrial output to be redirected to Dominion channels. 30% of population to be relocated for labor. Military compliance inspections to begin immediately. The colony governor, Elias Moreau, responded with formal diplomatic language. He requested clarification, negotiation, trade alternatives. Humanity was not a Concord signatory under Dominion authority. There must be some misunderstanding. There was none. 6 hours later, Dominion warships translated into orbit. They arrived without fanfare, dark, angular vessels blotting out starlight. No warnings followed. No second demands. They opened fire. Orbital defense platforms were vaporized in the first volley. Human patrol craft launched anyway, outgunned but unwilling to stand idle. They died, transmitting targeting telemetry back to the surface. Kinetic bombardment began next. City domes ruptured like fragile glass. Atmospheric processors ignited in cascading explosions. Agricultural sectors burned. Evacuation corridors clogged with debris and plasma fire. Communications filled with overlapping distress signals. Governor Moreau transmitted a final message on all frequencies. We are civilians. There are children here. The Dominion response was clinical. Compliance window expired. The bombardment intensified. Within 6 hours, Colony Kestrel was uninhabitable. Surface temperatures spiked beyond survivability thresholds. The orbital infrastructure was reduced to drifting wreckage. An estimated 12 million humans were dead. Then the Varketh did something they had done 100 times before. They broadcasted across trade lanes, across diplomatic networks, across Concord assemblies, footage of burning cities, collapsing habitats, human vessels disintegrating under green plasma lances. The closing message was simple. This is the cost of defiance. The galaxy reacted as expected. Silence. Minor powers rerouted trade away from human systems. Diplomatic envoys withdrew to reassess regional stability. Analysts concluded humanity would comply. No species absorbed such a blow without bending. The Dominion had made its point. On Earth, the footage played once. Governments issued statements of outrage. Emergency sessions convened. Markets crashed for exactly 47 minutes. Then something unusual happened. The shouting stopped. Political rivals stood side by side without cameras. Military channels shifted to encrypted priority. Civilian manufacturing projections were recalculated. Artificial intelligence oversight councils were granted expanded authority under emergency provisions written decades earlier but never invoked. No public threats were made. No retaliatory fleets launched. No declarations of holy vengeance filled the networks. Earth went quiet. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, automated shipyards activated dormant construction arms. On Mars, industrial districts rerouted power to fabrication lines designed for rapid refitting. In the asteroid belt, mining corporations received classified directives and did not argue. Across human space, a single operational protocol synchronized. Strategic response, Phase 1. 3 months later, Dominion long-range logistics began to falter. A fuel depot at the edge of their territory suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. An asteroid refinery vital to ship hull production drifted off orbit after guidance systems corrupted. Navigation buoys near a key supply corridor transmitted subtly altered coordinates. Ships went missing. At first, the Dominion High Command dismissed it as coincidence. Mechanical failure, local incompetence. But the incidents accumulated. Patterns emerged. Not open attacks. Precision disruptions. The kind that suggested study. On the bridge of a Dominion battle carrier overlooking the scarred remains of Kestrel, Fleet Commander XYRR stood motionless as data streams flowed through the telepathic lattice. Something was different. The humans had not roared. They had not pleaded. They had not surrendered. They had gone silent. And for the first time in 3,000 cycles, the Varketh Dominion faced something unfamiliar, not resistance, but preparation. Humanity does not roar. It calculates. The Varketh Dominion understood rage. They had seen species fling fleets into hopeless counterattacks. They had crushed rebellions fueled by grief. Emotional retaliation followed predictable patterns: disorganized mobilization, overextended supply lines, desperate heroics. Rage was inefficient. Rage was easy to kill. So when humanity did not respond with immediate military force, the Dominion High Command interpreted it as weakness. Psychological collapse. Concluded war strategist role within the shared telepathic lattice. Species morale destabilized. Fleet Commander XYRR was less certain, because the losses were continuing, not in battle, in infrastructure. A Dominion heavy cruiser failed to exit fold space along a routine transit corridor. Investigations revealed microscopic fluctuations in navigation beacons, barely detectable distortions in gravitational calibration, the kind that required intimate knowledge of Dominion jump mathematics. 2 weeks later, a munitions depot near the Crawl Expanse detonated after its automated safety systems simultaneously reported contradictory atmospheric readings. Internal sabotage was ruled out. The Varketh did not sabotage themselves. Then a supply convoy transporting cloning substrates to a frontier shipyard suffered cascading engine failures. Diagnostics revealed malicious code embedded within maintenance firmware, code that had been dormant for months before activating in perfect synchronization. The Dominion did not use adaptive self-writing code. They did not need it. Humans did. Back in Sol, there were no speeches broadcast to the galaxy. No fiery declarations of vengeance. Humanity's leaders did not perform grief for interstellar audiences. They worked. The Strategic Defense Coalition, formed within hours of Kestrel's destruction, had unified Earth's fractured military commands into a single operational structure. Political differences were not erased, but they were deprioritized. Emergency powers redirected industrial output at unprecedented speed. Civilian manufacturing hubs converted to dual-use production lines. Autonomous cargo fleets were retrofitted with encrypted communication relays. University research labs received classified contracts with blank check funding. Artificial intelligences, long constrained by ethical oversight frameworks, were granted conditional wartime authority. Not to decide, to model. Every recorded engagement involving the Varketh Dominion across 3 millennia was fed into predictive simulations. Fleet maneuvers, energy signatures, telepathic coordination patterns inferred from synchronized movement timings. Human analysts identified the Dominion's greatest strength, instantaneous cohesion, which meant it could also be their greatest vulnerability. The telepathic lattice binding Varketh fleets operated within measurable psionic frequencies, subspace harmonics that stabilized collective awareness across vast distances. No species had ever attempted to interfere with it. The risks were too high. Disrupting unknown neurological phenomena could cause unpredictable effects. Humanity specialized in calculated risk. In the outer laboratories orbiting Saturn, researchers developed a field generator capable of emitting targeted subspace interference within the lattice's detected range. Not enough to sever the link completely, just enough to introduce delay. Milliseconds. In most species, milliseconds meant nothing. In a hive-coordinated war machine, they meant everything. The first field test occurred near a contested mining corridor at the Dominion frontier. A small human task force, 8 destroyers and a carrier, approached a Varketh patrol group twice their size. The Dominion ships moved in flawless formation, until they didn't. When the interference field activated, the Varketh vessels hesitated subtly. A microsecond pause between coordinated turns. Targeting arrays adjusted fractions of a second late. Defensive screens overlapped imperfectly. Human fire concentrated with surgical precision. One Varketh cruiser lost shield integrity before its escorts compensated. Another overcorrected formation spacing, exposing propulsion cores. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. For the first time in recorded Dominion history, a patrol group was forced into tactical withdrawal against an inferior numerical force. The Varketh crews did not experience fear as other species defined it, but within the lattice, something flickered. Uncertainty. Commander XYRR reviewed the engagement data in silence. "They have found the seam," he transmitted to the High Command. "Impossible," replied Strategist Rule. "Our unity is absolute." XYRR replayed the battle. The pause was there, minuscule but undeniable. Humanity had not attacked their strength directly. They had inserted friction into perfection. Across subsequent weeks, similar engagements unfolded. Human fleets avoided decisive confrontations. They targeted isolated units, supply routes, reconnaissance outposts, always near regions where subspace interference could be masked within natural gravitational anomalies. Each battle followed the same pattern: disruption, isolation, elimination. Dominion losses, while not catastrophic, accumulated at a statistically alarming rate. More troubling than the ships destroyed was the myth eroding beneath them. Other species were watching. For centuries, the Dominion's invincibility had been psychological as much as military. Worlds surrendered because resistance was futile. Now resistance had succeeded. Small, tentative rebellions flickered at the edges of Dominion territory. Tribute shipments slowed. Minor powers delayed compliance audits. The High Command convened a full strategic convergence. Escalation required. Rule declared. Overwhelming force will restore equilibrium. But XYRR hesitated within a lattice. "The humans are not reacting," he signaled. "They are shaping." It was an alien concept to the Dominion. War was domination. Direct. Crushing. Visible. Humanity's approach was colder. Months after Kestrel, Earth still had not issued a formal declaration of war. Instead, it issued production reports. Shipyard outputs increased 340%. Drone manufacturing rose 600%. Asteroid mining yields were diverted entirely to alloy reinforcement programs. Human fleets grew, not in grand, ceremonial armadas, but in modular, adaptable formations designed for rapid reconfiguration. Every Dominion tactic that succeeded once failed the second time. Adaptive shielding algorithms recalibrated mid-engagement. Drone swarms adjusted to counter Varketh plasma dispersion patterns. Human captains disengaged before suffering unacceptable losses, refusing symbolic last stands. They did not seek glory. They sought advantage. Then came the Kethra corridor engagement. A Dominion strike fleet, 40 capital ships strong, advanced toward a human-controlled relay system critical to subspace communications. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended. It was not. Human forces allowed the Dominion fleet to advance deep into the corridor before activating overlapping interference fields. For the first time, the telepathic lattice experienced full-spectrum disruption within a localized region. Coordination fragmented. Orders conflicted. Individual Varketh commanders, and used to autonomy, reacted inconsistently. Human fleets split the formation into 3 segments and attacked sequentially. By the time Dominion reinforcements arrived, 12 capital ships were debris. The monster they created, the Varketh Dominion, had not survived 3,000 cycles by hesitating. When the pattern became undeniable, when supply attrition crossed strategic thresholds and human interference fields expanded in scale, the High Command reached a singular conclusion. Escalation to total war. There would be no more patrol skirmishes. No incremental pressure. The Dominion would deploy its core armadas and crush humanity's center of gravity in one decisive strike. Target: Sol. Within weeks, the largest Varketh fleet assembled since the Threxian sterilization gathered at the edge of fold space. Hundreds of capital ships. Thousands of escorts. Planet Cracker siege platforms positioned at the rear. The telepathic lattice hummed at maximum coherence. There would be no seams this time. No hesitation. The interference zones that had disrupted patrol fleets would be overwhelmed by sheer psionic density. Commander XYR stood at the heart of the formation, awareness interwoven with every vessel. Advance, transmitted the High Command. The Armada translated toward human space. They expected panic. They did not find it. Human reconnaissance drones detected the fleet long before it exited fold space near the outer edge of the Sol system. The data streamed instantly to Earth, Mars, Luna, and the distributed command hubs hidden throughout the asteroid belt. No emergency broadcasts were issued. Strategic Response Phase 3 activated. For months, humanity had prepared for exactly this scenario. Not because it was certain, but because it was probable. Mars had become a fortress shipyard hybrid, its orbital rings bristling with kinetic launch arrays. The asteroid belt concealed thousands of autonomous drone pods embedded within hollowed rock. Jupiter's immense magnetosphere powered energy relays capable of amplifying directed solar emissions into coherent weaponized beams. Humanity had not tried to match the Dominion ship for ship. They had built a system. When the Varketh Armada emerged beyond Neptune, they encountered the first layer. Minefields, not static explosives, but adaptive gravitational mines, devices that altered local mass distributions unpredictably. Varketh vessels maintained cohesion, but micro-adjustments multiplied across the formation. Then the interference fields ignited, stronger than before, calibrated precisely to the frequency density of a full Dominion lattice concentration. The effect was not catastrophic. It was worse. Instead of clean unity, the lattice experienced signal echo, feedback distortions caused by overlapping psionic amplification. Command arrived fractionally duplicated. Maneuver vectors misaligned by degrees too small for organic instinct to detect instantly. Human long-range artillery fired from concealed positions within the Kuiper belt. The first Dominion capital ship fractured under concentrated kinetic bombardment before its escorts compensated. XYRR forced tighter synchronization, pushing the lattice to compensate for distortion. The Armada pressed inward, losing ships but maintaining advance. They reached the orbit of Uranus before the second layer activated. Drone swarms. Thousands upon thousands of autonomous craft erupted from dormant positions in ice rings and asteroid shadows. Individually insignificant, collectively overwhelming. They did not target shields directly. They targeted sensors, weapon apertures, communication arrays, blinding, disorienting, forcing Varketh ships to divert energy toward point defense systems. And still the Armada advanced. The Dominion believed in inevitability. Losses were acceptable if the objective was secured. Earth lay ahead. Then the trap closed. Human fleets that had appeared to retreat toward the inner system reversed course in perfect synchronization. They did not form a defensive wall. They formed a funnel. The Varketh Armada, committed and accelerating, entered the gravitational well near Jupiter, exactly where humanity had calculated they would. Solar amplification arrays aligned. Using Jupiter's magnetosphere as a stabilizing lens, human engineers released stored solar plasma in concentrated beams that lanced across space with star-forged intensity. 3 Dominion siege platforms evaporated in seconds. Interference fields peaked. For the first time in Dominion history, the telepathic lattice fractured locally. Not severed, but splintered. Individual commanders felt something alien. Isolation. Without perfect unity, reaction times slowed. Human predictive algorithms, fed by real-time battle data, anticipated maneuver corrections before they fully formed. Capital ships were separated from escorts. Escort wings were drawn into kill zones preceded with kinetic debris traveling at relativistic speeds. 40% of the invading armada was destroyed within a single engagement window. The remainder attempted withdrawal. Withdrawal. The concept that had once seemed impossible now rippled chaotically through the fractured lattice. Commander XYRR struggled to reassert cohesion as human fleets pressed the advantage. Not recklessly, but methodically. They did not pursue fleeing ships blindly. They targeted engines. Disabled, then moved on. This was not vengeance. It was dismantling. As the battered Dominion survivors translated out of Sol's outer boundary, the scale of the defeat settled across the shared consciousness. 40% losses. 3 siege platforms destroyed. Lattice instability confirmed under sustained interference. For 3,000 cycles, the Dominion had been the apex predator. Now, for the first time, they had encountered a species that did not fear predators, because humans had evolved among them. On Earth, there were no celebrations broadcast to the galaxy. Casualty lists were long. Cities had braced for planetary bombardment that narrowly never came. Entire defense platforms were gone. But the line had held. And more importantly, the myth had shattered. Within Dominion territory, subordinate species observed the data leaks and intercepted transmissions. The invincible armada had bled. Rebellions ignited in 3 peripheral systems within days. Tribute convoys were seized. Dominion governors requested reinforcements that no longer existed in sufficient numbers. Commander XYRR withdrew once more into a private cognitive partition. He replayed the moment the lattice fractured, the sudden, jarring awareness of individual thought unbuffered by collective certainty. The humans had not merely built stronger weapons. They had forced the Dominion to experience something evolution had stripped from them millennia ago. Doubt. And doubt, XYRR realized, was more corrosive than any solar beam. The Dominion had sought to exterminate a minor species to reinforce its legend. Instead, it had created something far more dangerous. A unified humanity fighting for survival. And there was nothing in 3,000 cycles of conquest that had prepared them for that. Never start a war with humans. The collapse did not happen in a single battle. Empires rarely fall that way. They unravel. In the cycles following the failed invasion of Sol, the Varketh Dominion began to fracture at its edges. Peripheral systems, long held in place by fear rather than loyalty, calculated new probabilities. Tribute shipments stalled. Occupied shipyards reported logistical delays. Minor species, once too terrified to coordinate, began transmitting encrypted messages to each other and quietly to humanity. The myth of inevitability was gone, and without inevitability, the Dominion was merely powerful. Humanity understood this. They did not surge blindly into Dominion core space in triumph. They advanced with controlled pressure, targeting infrastructure, not populations. Cloning facilities that sustained the Varketh war cast were disabled with precision strikes. Military foundries were infiltrated by adaptive code that rendered fabrication lines inoperable without detonating surrounding civilian sectors. Every action followed the same doctrine. Neutralize capacity. Avoid unnecessary annihilation. Shorten the war. Commander XYR observed the human advance from the command nexus orbiting the Dominion homeworld. For the first time in recorded history, the telepathic lattice operated in diminished bandwidth. After the Sol engagement, sustained interference had forced the Dominion to decentralize portions of their shared consciousness to prevent catastrophic feedback loops. They were no longer perfectly unified, and that imperfection spread. Some within the High Command demanded a final measure, planetary-scale, biogenic retaliation against Earth. Others argued for defensive consolidation around the core systems. The debates themselves were unprecedented. The Dominion had always spoken with one will. Now, fractures formed along ideological lines. Human fleets entered Dominion territory not as a chaotic swarm, but as a tightening perimeter. Strategic nodes fell one by one. Automated defense grids were subverted or isolated. Supply corridors were severed with mathematical efficiency. There was no grand speech from Earth, no declaration of righteous fury, only a steady, unstoppable advance. When the outer defensive ring of the Dominion home system collapsed, XYRR experienced something he could not categorize within traditional Varketh cognition. Not fear of death, but awareness of consequence. The humans did not behave like conquerors. Their fleet formations avoided densely populated urban zones. Targeting solutions deliberately excluded planetary biospheres. Instead, they dismantled orbital command platforms, communications arrays, and weapons batteries with surgical accuracy. They were not here to erase the Varketh. They were here to end the war. The final confrontation occurred in high orbit above the Dominion capital world, a planet of crushing gravity and metallic oceans where the species had first evolved. Human flagship Resolute Horizon transmitted on open frequencies. The message was simple. This war ends now. The Dominion expected demands of submission, territorial surrender, reparations beyond measure. Instead, the humans transmitted terms structured like engineering schematics. Immediate cessation of offensive operations. Dismantling of war cloning programs. Permanent limitation of fleet production capacity. Multi-species oversight council established within Dominion space. Integration into a defensive pact under strict compliance monitoring. There was one clause that echoed louder than the rest. No extermination. Within the fractured lattice, disbelief rippled. For 3,000 cycles, the Dominion had annihilated resistance as policy. They had erased cultures for lesser provocations than Kestrel. By their own doctrine, humanity's response should have been absolute eradication. Commander XYRR requested direct communication with the human fleet commander. The connection formed visual, not telepathic. A human admiral appeared on screen. No ornate uniform, no theatrical posture, just fatigue etched across determined features. You have the advantage, XYRR transmitted through translated audio. Why do you not finish us? The Admiral's response was steady. Because we're not trying to become you. Silence settled between them. Heavy, unfamiliar. You destroyed 12 million of ours, the Admiral continued. If we erase your species, we prove you were right about how power works. XYRR processed the statement. You seek moral superiority? No, the humans said. We seek stability. You started this war, believing fear would protect you. It didn't. We're ending it so no one tries that again. Behind the Admiral, fleet telemetry displayed human vessels holding precise formation, powerful enough to sterilize the Dominion homeworld within hours. They did not fire. Within the Dominion High Command, debate surged, then faltered. Strategic models calculated the probability of survival if resistance continued. Less than 3%. For the first time in their history, the Varketh faced extinction not as conquerors, but as the conquered. Commander XYRR made the transmission that would redefine his species. The Dominion accepts. The lattice dimmed, not shattered but humbled. Human fleets did not celebrate. They did not broadcast triumph across the galaxy. Instead, they began coordinated withdrawal protocols, leaving behind monitoring stations and joint oversight envoys. Across known space, the reaction was immediate. Species that had once bowed to the Dominion reconsidered their own trajectories. The Galactic Concord, long paralyzed, reformed with renewed authority, this time with humanity as a central architect rather than a peripheral participant. And the Varketh? Their war-cloning facilities were dismantled under supervision. Their fleet production quotas were capped. Young Varketh were educated not only in Dominion history, but in the cost of Kestrel. Years later, a Varketh delegation stood beside human representatives during the signing of a multi-species defensive charter. Commander XYRR, older and operating within a voluntarily reduced lattice connection, observed the humans carefully. They were still divided politically, still argumentative, still emotionally expressive in ways the Dominion struggled to interpret. But when threatened, they unified with terrifying efficiency. The galaxy had once believed the Varketh were the apex species because they could not feel fear. Now it understood something different. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was the one that could feel fear and choose not to be ruled by it. Humanity did not roar when attacked. It calculated. It adapted. And when necessary, it ended wars. The final record entered into the restored Galactic Archive read, "The Varketh Dominion learned the hard way what the galaxy now knows. Never start a war with humans.